DFS Fridays here on the Pete Overzet YouTube channel. We got the block party with JMToWin from 1 week season. We're going to walk through this week 5 DraftKings slate, go position by position, get all of JM's favorite plays, and then we will build a lineup on DraftKings with some of JM's favorite building blocks for this slate. Immediately following that, we got the Bully the Sim show, Youdacao hopping on here to walk through the Sims, his favorite plays, some ball-knowing angles for this slate. Can't wait. Buckle up. 2 hours here of hardcore DFS talk. Let's do it, starting with the block party.
Peter's one of the greatest depositors I've ever seen.
Trust the process. Let's go.
I got auto match with Levitan. Bullshit.
I just go the other way. Hit that 66. I win all the money. All the money.
If I had 150 lineups, I'd win too.
AP, 35 bullets to your head like KD. Bust it, bitch, go bust it. And I had 10 pints with me in Russia.
Hey everyone.
All right, JM, we're finally in the thick of it. The bye weeks have hit. I feel like the injuries are piling up. There's less places to go than there has been in previous weeks. Are you getting excited for this slate?
Yeah, looking at the screen, once my view is like a light on me and a little bit darker, that means that it's winter or fall in the Pacific Northwest. Like the clouds have come in, which means we're past like week 4. So yeah, there's a feeling to this point in the season that surrounds us here on this podcast. Yeah, we got the bye weeks, we've got injuries, we've got a dark day outside at 10 a.m. on the West Coast. So I'm ready to rock and roll.
All right. Yeah. Real quick before we dive into the week 5 slate, how was week 4? I always have that moment here where I'm on the show trying to remember even what happened last week and what kind of teams took down tournaments. But how did your week 4 go? Yeah,
week 4. I mean, it was funny. Week 4 was essentially the same as my week 3, except, week 3, I said I had a roster that was pretty live to finish at the top of the tournament. And I just didn't get the run out. Week 4, I did get the run out. So I got second place in the face mask,
Ooh, nice.
Just shy of first place. So 20K payout, just shy of that 50K payout. But, zooming out, it was like, well, it was the exact same as week 3, except, week 3, that one roster that was pretty live and was probably a favorite heading into the fourth quarter, finished like 16th or 17th, right? Everything broke the wrong way. Week 4, not everything broke the right way, but enough broke the right way that I was able to get that top finish. And so week 3, lowest ROI of the season, week 4, highest ROI, but kind of the same thing, right? And that's what we're trying to position ourselves for, is recognize that over time, if we're constantly in that position, things will break our way enough that we're making that money.
Totally not the FBI wants to know, Pete, when are you going to grow the JM stash? Here's the thing. I have been. I've been working on it for about a year, and this is where I'm at. So we're trying to catch up with JM. I think in about a decade, I could potentially get there. Any kind of macro thoughts about when we do hit this portion of the season? We're kind of at the quarter way mark, the bye weeks, the injuries. We kind of know who these teams are, at least how they want to operate. And we also have some unfortunate, spots as well where the Ravens, we talk about them, potentially having 30-point team totals whenever Lamar's playing, and now we get Cooper Rush. Any kind of macro notes that you're thinking about heading into this slate?
Yeah, well, this particular slate is interesting because we'll get to quarterback here in a minute, but it seems pretty clear that Justin Fields is like far and away the best play on paper, but he's also very high variance. And we'll talk about that more. It's not just that he's not the best player, but it's also about how the Cowboys try to win games, how the Jets try to win games, how that mixes and what that might lead to. And so it's one of those slates where I immediately look at it and it's like, okay, so where else can we go? Where else can we be different? But the rest of the slate is really ugly at the quarterback position. So there's no clear standout. And then that bleeds down to the pass catchers. And so it's a week where like my pass catcher list, my running back list is pretty deep because similar to last week, I think it's a week where you could kind of throw a dart at a running back and get 20 plus points, maybe even 25 to 30. And just have a sharp pool, right? And pull from that sharp pool, you're going to get some good scores. We don't know, right? But that's what it looks like. And then wide receiver, it's like, I've got a pretty deep list because it's like, yeah, like these are my top plays. These are like my tier 2B plays, but there's not a ton that separates them. Like somebody from this broad list is going to hit, but it's hard to pinpoint who it's going to be. And so, yeah, it's a unique week in that regard. And then also in this week's, any of you who are OWS subscribers or even just free members, you get the Angles email every week. And this week in the Angles email, Larejo broke down some of the key stat points from like after week 4 in 2024 of like who were the top plays at certain positions or who hadn't done anything yet. And you kind of get that reminder that there's still a long way to go in this season, right? Like week 8 or 9, Nick Chubb could be completely phased out of the Texans offense. And Woody Marks could be a guy that we're, on a regular basis paying like $6,500 for, just to give an example, right? There's a lot that's still going to change from this point forward. And so we have a lot of information, but I think it's also important to recognize that most teams, especially with the shortened preseason, they view these first 4 games as kind of the extended preseason. If you can come out of it 2-2 with a clear sense of who you are as a team, then that's really what you're looking for, right? And the more wins you have, the better. But a lot of teams are starting to adjust at this point too. So I think there's still a lot that we have to recognize. Yes, we've seen a lot, we've learned a lot, but these teams are still adjusting and growing. And so there's still a lot left to learn as we move into this season.
Yeah, let's do a quick kind of overview of the game environments this week. Fortunately, we do not have to deal with the Vikings, Cleveland Browns 36-point total on this main slate. Raiders Colts jumps out in that early window with a 48-point total. Cowboys Jets, which you referenced, I think is going to be very popular. We all like picking on that. Cowboys secondary, 47.5-point total. And then there's the Lions Bengals, has the top total on the slate, 49.5. And then Commanders Chargers looking good as well. Hopefully getting Jaden Daniels back this week. I do have the injury feed up here, so I'll be sure to pass along any notes as they come in. But what are you seeing from an overall game perspective this week?
Yeah, it's hard to pinpoint a game that might shoot out, right? Dallas and the Jets, obviously. I think once we start talking about Fields, we'll talk about the kind of the downside case there as well. But then you go through all the other games, and it's like, really, what stands out as a game that could shoot out? Las Vegas, there's this perception they're bad on defense. They're not bad on defense. They're okay on defense. They play a ton of cover 3, but they generally keep the ball in front of them. The Colts should be able to get their 27, 28 points, but it's hard to see a shootout developing, especially with how bad Geno Smith has looked. Denver and Philadelphia, you've got these great defenses. Tampa and Seattle, Tampa's so banged up. It's in Seattle. Seattle builds everything off the run. You can't really run against Tampa. So there's a lot going on in that game where sort of broad range in which you can play out. And then Washington and the Chargers, to me, that's the game where it's like, okay, if I'm not going Fields, what looks the best on paper? It's Herbert. But also the Commanders, like, are they going to be able to get a ton going in this game on offense? They don't have Terry McLaurin. We still don't know about Deebo Samuel. We assume Jaden Daniels is coming back, but this is a tremendously difficult defense to pass the ball on. The Giants just ran, right? Jackson Dart designed runs and Cam Scattaboo and keep the game low scoring, keep it close in that way. Well, that seems to be the way that Washington would be best suited to win this one, is keep the ball on the ground, which lowers the scoring pace and lowers the aggressiveness from the Chargers side. So yeah, it's hard to get excited about game environments this week, which realistically means that like maybe no game environment hits. It also could mean that if one hits, it's the only one that hits, and you had to have that one, right? So those are kind of the two ways to look at it. I'll also throw one more thought out there is I was talking to Kevin Adams this last week. He's founder of FTN. He sold that a couple of years ago. He started stat rankings this offseason. And he was telling me he had a roster that was like finished near the top of everything and had Malik Neighbors this last week, right? And so he sent me the roster, and then he asked me to send him the roster that I had that finished second in the face mask. He had a Jackson Dart, Cam Scattaboo, Malik Neighbors stack. I had a Patrick Mahomes, Xavier Worthy, Tyquan Thornton stack. For neither of us was that the reason why we were up near the tops of tournaments, right? And so I think this could be a week like that where we spend so much time thinking about the stack. And if it's not Fields who hits, then it might be nobody who hits, right? And it's just like we spend all this time worrying about the stack, but really that's the spot where you just have to make sure you don't lose it and then get the right pieces in other spots. So I think this could be a week like that.
Yeah, and we've seen, certain weeks where it's like, last week was certainly a week where you needed the top running back spores, Genty and Amari and Hampton going off, and other weeks it's been, the wide receivers, Puka Nacua, where you just basically had to have that. And like you said, if the scoring's flat at quarterback, and this slate does look like that with not a ton of elite quarterbacks here. Josh Allen playing in that Sunday night game there. So that takes one of the big names off the slates. But let's head over there to quarterback. And I think we should just start with Justin Fields at 5,600. He is going to be the most popular quarterback play on the slate. I feel pretty confident saying that. And then also people like the matchup so much there. The Cowboys have given up the most points to opposing quarterbacks of any defense. So it is going to be hard for the field to get away from there. But like you said, it's a volatile spot. So how are you thinking about Justin Fields?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we have to look through the lens of how these teams are playing. I've been saying it all year, right? The Cowboys are not an aggressive offense. They're just really good when they throw the ball, but they're building everything off the run. So if they're in control of this game, they're not necessarily pushing the pace. The Jets, I mean, it was like I started writing up. So I was flying out to Oakland on Tuesday. For any of you who are new here, I live in Oregon. They got rid of DraftKings a few years ago. So I fly to Oakland every week to reserve my entries. And so I was flying to Oakland and I was looking through the slate and dropping some thoughts in my journal on Discord. And it was like, man, this Justin Fields play, right? So I got my layover in Oakland and I go back and watch the Jets and Dolphins game. I hadn't watched it yet. And it was like, okay, this Fields play is not as like slam dunk as you think, right? They were trailing that whole game and refused to throw the ball. I mean, they wait so long before they will give the ball over to Justin Fields and say, all right, you're allowed to throw the ball now, right? And they have to be trailing deep into the game in order for that to happen, or trailing by a large margin early in the game. But if the Cowboys are not aggressive, then how do we get this propulsion where Justin Fields is having to throw the ball 25 to 30 times? Because if we're just relying on his rushing, you had that like awesome 40-plus yard scramble on 4th and 1, whatever it was. The play was stopped. He reversed field. He gets this big run. Like without that, that's 10 points that he picked up last week just on that alone, right? If he's not getting one of those types of runs, then all of a sudden, like this becomes a much more volatile play if they're not letting him throw the ball. And you're wanting to stack him with Garrett Wilson because he's the only target. And it's like, oh, well, clearly if he hits, it's going to Garrett Wilson. It's like, not if he's throwing the ball 18 times. And so I do think there's to be clear, like Fields is my favorite quarterback on this slate, but I just see a very clear downside case where it's like the Cowboys, if they're up by 10 points, they're not going to say, hey, like, let's open things up and keep throwing. They're just going to be like, all right, let's wait for the Jets to make mistakes. Let's stay in control of this game. And then the Jets are only down by 10, so they keep running the ball. And we end up with this weird situation where even though the matchup sets up so well, the game just never takes off because of the way these teams are calling things. So what I'm thinking right now, I'm playing single entry 3 max this week, same as last week, but I don't just play one roster, right? It's like last week I played 20 rosters in single entry 3 max. I'll play somewhere between like 9 and 20 rosters this week. And probably like half of my money will be on Fields. And then the other half will be like, where do we go if Fields misses? Because I do think it's very binary in that regard. Like either Fields puts up, he's got 28 plus in 2 out of 3 games. The Bills game didn't finish, but still he looked awful. He played most of the game. So we got to count that one. But 28 plus in 2 out of 3. And he could very clearly do that here. And then he might be the only quarterback who hits. He's the guy you had to have. But also he could have like 12 points, right? And so then how do we win if that happens? And that's how I'm attacking this week is like half my rosters, what I'm thinking on Friday, right? Half my bankroll on Fields, the other half saying, who wins if Fields underperforms in this spot?
Is that something, I know you don't track ownership stuff too much, or at least not let it kind of impact the plays you want to make, but is that something where the more popular Fields is projected to be where you might adjust, or do you think that you're just going to kind of play it binary there regardless?
I think binary regardless. He's currently projected at like 12 to 15%. Realistically, he's going to end up at like 25%, right? Like I think we all could agree that like he's at that level where it's going to get juiced up and it's going to be higher ownership than you'd think it would be. But also when you just zoom out and look at this slate, it's very clear what's likeliest to make you money on this slate, and it's that Fields play. And then it becomes a question of how do you play the Fields play? There are cases to be made that if this game takes off, you could play 3 Jets, 3 Cowboys, and that's actually the most plus EV way to play it, right? And then most of your roster is taken up already. Or you kind of think like, okay, who are the Cowboys pieces that push it? I will have a rule that I'm going to have Cowboys pieces on every Jets roster because it doesn't happen without the Cowboys scoring points. The Jets won't proactively come out and be aggressive and drive the scoring pace in this one. So a lot of times I'm fine stacking one side and not stacking the other. This is a game where I'm going to have Cowboys bringbacks, probably multiple on every Fields roster. But yeah, regardless of ownership, you look at the slate, 10 games, a lot of spots that don't look good. This spot looks so good, but it's high variance. So it's just kind of like, how do we win on this slate? And regardless of ownership, that's how it shakes out to me.
Let's quickly touch on the 2 most expensive guys, Daniels and Hurts, and let's work under the assumption Daniels is going to return this week. It's going to be tough for the field to get there, right? Because they're going to look at the projection and they're going to say, hey, Justin Fields projects similarly for $1,500 less. So I assume Daniels and Hurts will be pretty unique in tournaments. Is there any way that you see yourself getting to either of those guys?
Yeah, I think for Daniels in particular, it would be strategy, because also not only does Fields project similarly, but in a game where Daniels is hitting, Justin Herbert has a pretty good shot at hitting at a similar or, maybe even higher level. And Herbert's bringing more pass catchers with him if he hits. So the math works in your favor even more. So that was a spot that early in the week, it was like, for me, it was like, okay, if I don't have Fields, I'm probably going Herbert or Daniels, right? And then as the more I thought about it, the more I was like, well, you just play Herbert. That's the sharper way to do it. But then when you take into account ownership and strategy and how you might outmaneuver the field, I think there's a case to be made for Jaden, but that case isn't on paper like what's likeliest to get you the most points and what's likely to fill the most spots with points on your roster. It's more like, well, Jaden can do it and people won't be on him. So that's how I see him. Hurts, I don't have a read on this. I mean, I don't think anybody has a read on this Eagles offense. The Eagles don't have a read on this Eagles offense. And I don't generally play teams against Denver, but I do see a world in which the Broncos are competitive enough and scoring enough points that it pushes Philly. I don't think I'm playing that on tighter builds, but I can see that case in large field play.
As far as some value quarterbacks on this slate, I mean, one I'm curious your thoughts on, because he has kind of jumped out at me, just this game environment, the price, the lack of overall interest, just because his points have gone down literally every single week since week 1. But any love for Daniel Jones?
Yeah, I have a hard time seeing Daniel Jones putting up the 300-yard game against the Raiders, only because it's hard for me to see the game environment that creates that. It's hard for me to see the Raiders driving things in such a way that Daniel Jones has to open things up. So then you're hoping for the rushing touchdown. You know, I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, I think it was week 1, that Daniel Jones had 3 sneaks from the 1-yard line in a row, right? Where it was like the first one didn't work. They called it the second time. They called it the third time, right? So he does have that rushing touchdown equity that doesn't have to come from long touchdowns. But yeah, I mean, he's kind of one of these guys that for me is in the third tier for me, where it's like Justin Fields, and then below that, Herbert and Kyler Murray, who I don't love, but he just keeps popping in the optimizer for me. He keeps popping in projections. He keeps popping even in projections across the industry in terms of, and I get it, like it's this match against Tennessee. Arizona has a good team total. They're down their top 2 running backs. I don't see Tennessee pushing this game enough, but I have made a case this year that, you know, eventually Kyler plus Marvin Harrison Jr. plus McBride is going to hit. And in MME, my plan is just play it every week, a little bit every week. This week, I'm not playing MME, but it's like, well, shoot, I should probably have a little bit of this if that keeps popping. And then there's another guy we'll talk about later. And then there's like a tier below that, which is kind of a lot of guys in that tier. So Daniel Jones is in that group, but so is Sam Darnold. So is Spencer Rattler. You know, a guy I think is actually really interesting, talking about high variance, is Bryce Young. And the thought here is, you know, the Cowboys, check the mic, Steve Palazzolo and Sam Monson, they had some great stats this week. There was basically like the Cowboys defense this year has allowed like record-setting quarterback production. You know, if stats against the Cowboys this year was just one quarterback, they would be on pace for like the greatest quarterback season ever, right? But then the Dolphins have been even worse in terms of like all the basic stats you would look at for how bad is a passing defense. And so do I trust Bryce Young? No, but it's a slate where you're probably not playing somebody you trust. And Bryce Young, we know he's capable of these 30-plus point games. He's done it a couple times. And he's got a clear stacking partner with Tedero and McMillan. And so, yeah, that's another one. But it's kind of grouped up in this tier. Daniel Jones is in this third tier for me, where it's like, I'll probably throw a dart at 2 guys from this group and see if I get something right. And then, you know, I don't love Herbert this week either. I don't love Kyler this week either. And they're kind of in my second tier. It's just the nature of the quarterback position this week.
Yeah, it is. There's nothing that really jumps out except Fields, which I do think is going to lead to pretty high ownership. And a couple guys in the chat who've been messing around with sims say every sim is smashing Fields. He's being pumped out in all of the sims. So kind of similar to what we saw, was it 2 weeks ago with Herbert? The sims were loving him and his ownership came in much higher than projected.
Yeah, so I think 20 plus is definitely what we're going to see. And I won't be surprised if we see 25.
Yeah, I think we've kind of touched on most of the interesting ones. Like you said, one of them we're going to save for the lineup build. So there's a little tease for you guys to keep watching here. I guess one other one, like, what do you make of Sam Darnold right now? Playing really well at home. JSN is balling out. The running game kind of struggling a little bit, and it's really the passing game that's cooking here. What do you think about him?
Yeah, like sometimes I watch these games, like I was watching Seattle this last week, and I always think like, man, if I were an NFL coach, there's no way I would run any system except this Shanahan system, because it looks so good when it's working. The problem with the Shanahan system, which includes Kubiak with the Seahawks and several others, right? But the problem with the Shanahan system is everything is built off the run. So if you fall behind by 10 points, all of a sudden, like your whole offense doesn't work because you don't just have a straight drop back passing game. So Sam Darnold, he looks tremendous this year. And he's in this sort of third group for me, but he looks tremendous this year. And he's been so efficient, right? It's been on low volume. And they're like, man, what if we get a game with 37 pass attempts, 40 pass attempts? But then it's also like, if we get that game with 37 or 40, does the offense actually work? Like the offense works because they run the ball and run the ball and run the ball. And they build these looks off of the run with all this, boot action and all the offensive line going this way, all the run action going this way. And you're going out, you're stretching the defense, not just vertically, but horizontally as well. And this Kubiak offense is very good at that. And so, I do think this is an interesting week for Darnold where I keep playing around with him in my head because you're playing the Bucs, who you can't really run against anyway. And so you do expect higher passing volume. And so then the question is, how much higher, right? Like, do the Seahawks, if their tremendous defense is doing well against a banged up Bucs offense, do the Seahawks say like, well, yeah, we're not running the ball effectively, but we're still going to keep running the ball because that's how our offense is built? Or do they say, hey, let's drop back and throw more? And then if they say, let's drop back and throw more, is it as effective without all of the action that they're typically layering in there? So, I do like Sam Darnold this week. I like JSN this week. I don't know for sure if I'm going to get there on Darnold on tighter builds, but he's certainly in the mix for me this week. And like with most quarterbacks, there's positives, there's negatives.
Let's hop over to running back because I think it's probably the most interesting position this week because we do have the fun high-end plays, but now we have a bunch of plays opening up because of injuries. So Bucky Irving out, Rachaad White in play, Trey Benson out, potentially Michael Carter in play, and then the most recent one today, Chuba Hubbard ruled out, which means Rico Dowdle is going to be the starting back there. But maybe we start at the top end and then we can get into any of those value plays. What are you liking up here at the top? I'll include, Taylor Gibbs, Barkley, Achane, and I think we can include Hampton probably in that mix as well. Yeah,
it's funny you mentioned, needing to have the running backs last week, but I think because they didn't have high ownership, it kind of went overlooked that Bijan Robinson put up over 30, Bucky Irving put up 30, James Cook put up whatever he put up, 25 plus. I had Amari and Hampton on that roster that finished up near the top, but I didn't have whoever the other running back was.
Genty.
So I didn't have Genty on that roster. I still got my 30 points from Bucky Irving. I had some other rosters that did really well with James Cook and Amari and Hampton, or even James Cook and Bucky Irving. So I do think, or Bijan Robinson and one of these other guys, I do think this is a week where there's a lot of running backs to like. It doesn't mean they're all going to hit again, but it's sort of a similar week where I'm not overthinking my tiers at running back. If I'm trying to build a certain roster and I need these running backs to make it work, I'll be like, all right, great. I've had some practice builds where it was Michael Carter and Rachaad White, and it was cool, I like this roster, and I've had other ones where it was Devon Achane and Jonathan Taylor, and it's cool, I like this roster, right? Because you're building something different in the other parts of your roster, and it's which running backs fit. So I do think Devon Achane is the top guy in this top tier. There's a lot of interesting things going on here in so far as he's going to be more involved because they need him in the passing game. He's already so involved in the passing game. They'll need to figure out the rushing attack. Also, at the same time, remember 2 years ago, all the talk was man, Mike McDaniel's rushing attack is so creative. It's so good. It's one of the best rushing attacks in the NFL. Well, a lot of that was because the defense had to respect that deep ball so much, right? And now defenses have figured out how to take away that deep ball, so the rushing attack hasn't been as effective. And now you take out Tyreek Hill. So obviously the Panthers, the perception around them is they're horrible against the run. They're actually not horrible this year against the run. They're still bad, but not horrible. But they will be able to creep down more and try to focus on stopping the run because they're not as scared of getting beat over top. And so I do think that there's downside to Achane, that it's not as slam dunk obvious as it looks on paper. But I also think he's the best play of this group at the top. And then behind him, I think I have Jahmyr Gibbs actually a little bit above Jonathan Taylor. Just because I think we know the Lions don't take their foot off the gas, right? And I think they can score 40 plus points here. And if you're getting 5, 6, 7 touchdowns, there's a pretty good chance that Jahmyr Gibbs is involved in that. And then Jonathan Taylor, he had the 5 catches last week, but it was a different game script than we would expect this week. So mostly you're hoping for that 100 plus yard game for the multiple touchdowns. So I think he's got this broad range of outcomes where it won't surprise me if he scores 35. It won't surprise me if he scores 12, 13, 14, 15, right? And so at his price tag, I'm not super scared to miss out on him, but he's certainly in my pool, and I'm going to be mixing in JT this week.
One spot that's kind of interesting, is normally when we have the super chalky quarterback, you're like, ooh, maybe the sneaky way to play this is actually to go through the running back if there's a viable play. And so with the Jets, Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, it looks like probably isn't going to play again this year at this point, should be the clear lead back with a little Isaiah Davis mixing in. But he's going to be very popular this week too, because he's so cheap at 5,600. So what do you think about the Breece Hall play in a vacuum and kind of coupled with the overall interest in the Jets?
Yeah, I think, so projection systems are overrating the absence of Braylon Allen in my mind, and which then swings them more heavily toward Breece Hall projections, which makes him pop at his price tag, which will lead to him being popular. So it's a tough thing because I do think he's a sharp play, but I also think that Isaiah Davis, they love Isaiah Davis. He's going to step in and take on plenty of work. Maybe not as much as Braylon Allen, maybe not as much work close to the goal line as Braylon Allen was taking, but I don't think that Breece Hall just catapults up to being a 6,500 running back just because Braylon Allen is out. But I do like the play. I mean, I like the matchup. I like the situation of the setup. And there's also this component of, I keep saying, how Fields fails is the Jets waiting way too long to start throwing the ball. Well, if they're doing that, then Breece Hall just keeps getting touches, right, on the ground. So they're not as valuable as passing touches because we don't get that point per reception. But, yeah, I think that Breece Hall is a perfectly fine, perfectly sharp play down here. I think Rachaad White's a perfectly fine, perfectly sharp play because, I think it was last time he had this role, 10 of his last 12 games, he scored 15 plus DraftKings points. He's just so heavily involved in the passing attack. Michael Carter scored I've got in my notes, it was 10 and 15 points last year. When he was in this role, he's only 4K. So, I mean, I really don't see a running back where I'm oh God, they're going to just put the slate out of reach. And so then I see a lot of guys where it's this guy's probably going to put in the solid score. This guy's probably going to put in the solid score. If somebody does put the slate out of reach, it's going to be from this group of guys who we're just expecting a solid score from. So, this is a spot where a position where I like a lot of guys and I'm just not overthinking it much. You brought up Amari and Hampton. I didn't mention my thoughts on him in the earlier group. I mean, I think he's perfectly sharp, right? He's getting 56 out of 63 snaps last week. I don't think they can keep that up all season. Washington has been good against the run. They've allowed, I think, 3.7 yards per carry. Even Algier and Bijan last week, it was 3.8 yards per carry for them. And then obviously Hampton's missing Joe Alt, missing Rashawn Slater. So I don't love the play, but it's certainly in the mix, right? It's not one that I'm layering in above other guys, but he's right there in the mix with it's kind of like this, right? I really like Javonte Williams this week. He's getting so many touches. People are still not trusting what he's showing on the field. He's going to be involved close to the goal line. We expect lots of points to be scored this week. But then I'm also well, shoot, in terms of talent that I'm taking, Amari and Hampton's a better player and should see more touches than Javonte Williams, or at least more snaps than Javonte Williams. And they're basically priced the same, right? So I got to put Amari and Hampton in that category too. I do think there's edge with Javonte this week because people for whatever reason, aren't really going to him. And I kind of think I was looking at it last night as well, he's projected a tiny bit below some of these other guys and priced a tiny bit above, right? But within the margin of error, it's all within the margin of error, and the ownership's going to be way lower. So, I think Javonte Williams is kind of a sneaky way to play this price range as well.
Well, not to mention the additional game theory angles, right? A Javonte Williams game where he's getting 20 plus touches, that's slowing the game down. That's less possessions for Justin Fields chalk. And we already know the Jets play incredibly slow. So if you have Javonte slowing this game down anymore, that could be a double whammy of your low owned Javonte also cratering the Jets chalk. So I like that angle. To circle back to the value plays, how would you rank those three value options? And let's just say price, ownership adjusted, just all of it. Michael Carter, Rico Dowdle, and Rachaad White.
Yeah. So I actually did a ranking. Do I even have that still in my notes? I did a ranking last night for the in my journal, but I don't know off the top of my head what that ranking is. Rico Dowdle, that news came out this morning, right? So yeah. I won't throw in thoughts on that yet. I mean, it would be probably below, but if we're throwing Breece Hall into this mix, I'd say Breece Hall, Rachaad White, and then Michael Carter. And Michael Carter, I don't want to say a distant third in that group because, I don't want it to imply I'm not playing this guy, because I am, but I do think we play at the slate 100 times. He's less likely to put up a 25 pointer than these other two guys are.
Yeah. Yeah. The Carter stuff is so interesting because like normally it would strike me as like the most classic trap kind of selection of all time. It's like a guy who wasn't even on the team, who's still likely going to lose a little bit of work to, a Bo Knight, Gannon's literally on my timeline right now saying the Cardinals starting running back will be, we'll see. They'll all have their roles. And then on the other hand, they're 7.5-point home favorites versus a really bad Titans team. There should be plenty of early down carries available. And so you're like at 4K, that does start to look pretty intriguing.
Yeah. My what I'm looking at on my end, right? He had this role 2 times last year and significantly out-touched DJ Dallas. But I think the Cardinals like Amari DiMercado more than they liked DJ Dallas. So it's a question of, you've got Zonovan Knight, Bam Knight, but you also have like DiMercado, how much do they want to layer him in? I think they might want to layer him in a little bit more than they did DJ Dallas last year. So, I think there's downside risk with Michael Carter. What's interesting, too, is the part of the downside risk is like, well, on passing downs, DiMercado is going to come in. You remember, like, Michael Carter originally was the passing down back when he came in with the Jets. He had games, going back to those that first year of his, he had a game with like 9 catches. He had some other games like 6, 7 catches. I think those were Mike White games where it was like, all right, Mike White's a quarterback, just check down all game, but he can catch the ball too. So it's a weird situation with Michael Carter where there's a pretty broad range of outcomes. If I were getting, if I were shopping through my rosters and selecting my rosters, like I've got over 1,000 rosters built this week, hand builds, practice builds, Sims runs with different inputs and whatnot. And so at the end of the week, I'll kind of shop through those and pick like the 10, 15, 20 rosters I'm going to use. And if I ended up with like too many Michael Carter builds, I would take some of those out and replace them with something else, right? I don't feel confident enough to go heavy on Michael Carter, but I do feel confident enough to have some exposure to him this week.
Want to hit on a couple other guys who might be off the radar a little bit. Woody Marks coming off of a massive game, 27.9 points, really separating from Nick Chubb. Now they play this Ravens team who have been giving up a ton of points, both through the air and on the ground. Of course, no Lamar, so this overall game environment might be a little sluggish, but thoughts on him at 5,400?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about all these guys who are probably going to get 70% of the snaps, 65, 70% of the snaps. Woody Marks got 55% of the snaps last week, and it's been going up every week, right? So if it goes up to 60, 62, that won't be surprising. In a really good matchup. And the Texans are so atrocious on offense that I can't look at this matchup against the Ravens and be like, oh, it's a get right spot, right? I mean, even like the Chiefs having this great game against the Ravens, there were a few wide open throws, but a lot of those were, one step on the DB, tight window throws, stuff like that, right? It's not like the Ravens don't look like the Cowboys or the Dolphins. They've been giving up huge production because they played the Lions, they played the Bills, they played the Chiefs with Xavier Worthy, but they don't look as bad as the narrative around them or all the injuries around them would imply. And then the Texans just look bad, right? I mean, the Texans have so many holding penalties on offense, and it's like, it's not even one of those things you can coach out. It's like, oh, the offensive line's so bad that they're getting beat, so they have to hold, right? And they're just a bad offense. They were ahead 6-0 heading into the fourth quarter against Tennessee this last week, right? The final score looked good. They didn't look good. And so how are they going to try to win this game? Cooper Rush on the side. They still have their great defense. They're going to be running the ball, right? And so I think that Woody Marks is very interesting this week, and he's sort of in that third group for me of like not the top guys at running back, but guys that I want to mix in kind of deeper down.
Yep. What about this one? I don't know if you're familiar. There's a couple narratives in play here with David Montgomery. I think it's his first game back in his hometown of Cincinnati. Also, his sister, who I believe has special needs, it's her first time getting to see him play. There's a lot of chatter that Dan Campbell is going to will David Montgomery into the end zone this week. Narratives aside, though, any thoughts on the Montgomery play this week?
I've missed all this, but
there you go. Well, now you got to add it into the inputs there.
No, and it's like, it's legit. Like I take these things into account if we know the coaches, right? Like we know that Dan Campbell's the type of coach, 100%, 110%, who's going to be like, hey, if we got a chance to get David Montgomery a touchdown, let's get him a touchdown here, right? Like David Montgomery, anytime touchdown, like you can hammer that this week.
I think it's minus 180 though. I think the sports books have caught up to this one.
You're looking to win the game. I can see it, right? Like I could see him getting enough touches that it happens. Even his monster game, he had 12 carries, right? I don't know. It's hard to see them swinging all the way over to him, but just thinking out loud, like, yeah, it could happen, right? If they're controlling this game, it wouldn't be a shock for Dan Campbell to be like, hey, let's get Monty 17 touches this week, right? So I think he's viable. We have so much good value down low that it's harder to see that one paying off, but it's certainly in the bucket, I guess.
Yes. I know I'm putting you in a tough spot pulling up stories about his paralyzed sister. Sorry, I said special needs paralyzed. And yeah, he hasn't seen him play since the accident. So there you go. And I will say too, obviously on DraftKings, the full point PPR, it makes that play a little harder. I'm sure John Nez and I are going to talk about that play a lot on Underdog this week because he's going mostly undrafted.
Yeah.
It's way more of a touchdown heavy site. So might be better places to get your David Montgomery exposure this week. I guess just before we move on, I mean, like you said, there's so many strong plays this week that I'm guessing you're not getting to any of these, but, you know, I'll throw out some of the volume guys in tough spots, you know, the Tony Pollard, the Chase Brown, maybe even like a Kenneth Walker shout out there. Anything doing it for you with some of those dart throws?
No, not with those guys, but I mean, we didn't even touch on Cam Scatterbo. We didn't even touch on Alvin Kamara. Like I just, this slate's full, you know, Kamara, we see the stats from Kendra Miller last week, but Kamara still played, I think it was 73% of the snaps, right? I mean, he's still the lead guy there and good spot for him. So no, I just think running back is full of quality options this week. And I think that that's, like I said, for me, it's a spot where I don't want to overthink it. I'll have some rosters with 2 running backs. I'll have some rosters with 3. I think it's going to be really difficult this week to piece together 3 or 4 elite scores from wide receivers, just because there's so many question marks at wide receiver, right? So you're not taking, oh, this guy would hit 25% of the time or 30 or 40% of the time. You're taking guys who are like, this guy might hit 10, 12% of the time. But I also do think that there will be 3 or 4 wide receivers who hit. And so especially larger field tournaments could be won by the people who get those right combinations, you know? And so I will, just because I have higher confidence at running back doesn't mean I'm going 3 running backs across the board. I want to expose my rosters to those 4 wide receiver builds. But I do think that running back is a pretty high confidence spot across the board where I'm trying to not overthink it too much. I've got a pretty large list, and it's like whatever I need for this particular roster, I'll put those pieces in and let the chips fall as they fall.
One note about Cam Scatterbo is I did see Tyrone Tracy return to practice today, which could, you know, I guess that. Do you have a read on that? Like, let's just say Tracy did play. Is this one of those things where you can't unwind what we've seen from Scatterbo, or would that sharing of the backfield knock the play for you?
No, it would definitely knock the play for me because we're looking at, you know, what I like about him is he's going to get positive yards. He's basically Javonte Williams, right? He's going to get positive yards almost every play. He's going to get a lot of touches. He's going to catch passes. He's going to get touchdown opportunities. But he's not going to have a lot of breakaway runs. He's not going to have a lot of like 40-yard runs that are sort of making your day for you. And so you need that consistency and you need that volume. So I do think like, he's not getting put back in the bottle. He's going to stay a featured part of this offense. But having somebody who, you know, Devin Singletary did nothing last week, right? They gave him like 1 series or something last week.
Yeah.
The Tyrone Tracy would get more than that, and that would lower the touch equity and then lower the opportunity for just that efficiency to pile up for him. So I would definitely bump him down if Tyrone Tracy plays this week. I guess the injury reports giveth and the injury reports taketh away.
As we move over to wide receiver here, definitely want to mention what's going on over at 1 week season this week. JM was mentioning his diary. That's something you can get access to in the 1 week season Discord. I see here we got 50% off the Bink machine, the optimizer tool over at 1 week season. Anything else that people should know about over at OWS?
Yeah, if you signed up for one of the $1 week passes last week, you've got a discount for rest of season in your inbox. It's only for people who signed up for the $1 week pass. And then 50% off of the Bink machine this week. What I want to shout out on that is the reason we did this at this early juncture was because like I use it so much for single entry 3 max. And I think a lot of people just think of it as like, well, I don't play MME, so I don't need this, right? Like I said, I've got over 1,000 rosters and I'm able to sort of shop through and pick through and think through this week already. And, we use FTN's projections, which are really good. But if you have other projections that you prefer, you can always import those and just give yourself that opportunity to be able to like generate tons of rosters and mess around with different combinations, see what's showing up. I just think it's a really valuable tool for single entry 3 max. So early price drop on that as well.
Awesome. Yeah. Check that out. And as always, we,
you know what? Actually,
yeah.
Quick note on that. The promo code Pete still takes 20% off that. We just like dropped the Bink machine price this week. It's not a promo code. So you can actually apply the promo code on top of that and get another 20% off.
There you go. Stack those deals, 50% off plus an additional 20% off with promo code Pete. And that includes all of the 1 week season and inner circle subs. If you just want to do a day pass, a week pass, or sign up for the whole shebang, use that promo code Pete for 20% off. All right. Let's head over to the wide receiver position here. JM, we have no Puka. He was the place that we could always gravitate to when starting at the top here. And Jamar Chase, who we normally talk about at the top, this sad state of affairs here with Jake Browning at the helm. It leaves really just Amon-Ra, Jamar Chase, JSN here at the top. Where do you want to start with these guys?
How rare is it that everybody's on a guy like Puka and he hits the way he did last week?
Crazy.
He topped like 20, 25, 26 points, 27 points like once last year. And it was at that 42-44 game against the Bills where you really needed the scoring going back and forth. Pretty fun to see him just absolutely smash last week when like the discussion heading into the week was, man, is Puka the wide receiver one, And it was like, he came out, was like, yeah, guys, I am. So, so I really like the Lions offense. We'll keep teasing things. We're going to use some Lions stuff in the block just because there's a very interesting angle to think about there in terms of how we win tournaments. So I won't spend a ton of time on this, but I just think this is the type of spot where they're likely to score 5, 6, 7 touchdowns, right? And so if they do, those touchdowns are going to somebody, and those somebodies are Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Jameson Williams, Sam Laporta. So I think mixing in those guys is viable this week. There's also a world in which none of these guys hit for like a score you actually had to have, so it might not actually matter. But on a week that's pretty thin, I do think just like mixing in these guys, and the way I look at it is there's a pretty good chance that taking out David Montgomery, which now we got to think, do we put him in this mix? But like taking out David Montgomery, there's a pretty good chance that 2 of these other 4 guys score 20 plus points. And on this week, 20 plus point scores might be kind of, tough to come by. And so if you're getting 50% of your bets here are getting 20 plus points, that's really good. And my thought is if it doesn't work out that way, if 50% don't get 20 plus points, 17 plus points, whatever it is, then that's probably because one guy is getting a ton of points. And there probably won't be a ton of players like that this week that have those had to have it scores. And so you're giving yourself an opportunity. So say like on half of my builds, I might have exposure to Lions. And that's basically a way of saying like, a quarter of my builds now are getting a disappointing score. That's fine. I can still win. A quarter of my builds are getting a 20 plus point score. And if that doesn't happen, that probably means like 12, 13, 14% of my rosters are getting that had to have it score. That's going to be rare this week. So that's kind of how I'm looking at Amon-Ra St. Brown. The volume probably won't be there. It's tough to project him for a big game because it's tough to project the Bengals keeping this game close. But I do like him. Jackson Smith and Jigba, I don't like the matchup, but it's like I keep coming back to like, he's basically been Puka in terms of his usage, but with this team throwing way less, right? So if you look at like yards per route run and targets per route run, he's up there with Puka at the top of the league. They just don't throw the ball a ton. So if they throw the ball more this week, then that puts him up into that higher category. And then even if they don't, on a week where we're not going to get a ton of big scores, he's a pretty solid option. And then I've been back and forth on Jamar Chase all week, but it's like, realistically, do I trust, like Jake Browning has played fine in the past, right? Yeah. Do I trust this version of the Bengals against this tenacious Lions defense? I'm having a hard time with it. So I've had Chase early in the week. I've moved off of him. I haven't moved back onto him yet, but I could get there again on some portion of builds.
Yeah, it's still like a hefty price tag to pay for that volatility.
Yes. Yeah. And he's had one game with Jake Browning and 9 starts now, something like that. One game where he's hit. He can hit. It's just the price tag hasn't come down yet to match. It's kind of the opposite of the Cowboys, right? Like CeeDee Lamb goes out. You have a great matchup against the Jets. Again, you need the game environment to cooperate, but like the price tag on Pickens, Ferguson, Javonte hasn't quite caught up to their usage with CeeDee Lamb out. The reverse is true with these Bengals pieces where it's like the prices haven't dropped enough to account for Burrow being out. So you are overpaying. What ultimately matters is the raw score. So does he get one of the top raw scores? He's capable of it, so I want to keep him in mind, but I think it's pretty low probability this week.
We talked about Fields a little bit and Garrett Wilson about as clear of a wide receiver one as we have. I think he's at a 36% target share on the year. I'm curious, though, we've talked about this dynamic before with the rushing quarterbacks and their wide receivers in the stacking. And maybe it's offset because both of them are relatively cheap. But thoughts about Wilson as a play, and then how much you would want him paired with Fields and how much you would want him as a one-off?
Yeah, that's a great question. I thought you were going to go the other way and ask, like, how comfortable are you playing Fields naked? Which for me, I think there's edge in playing a stacking partner on all those Fields rosters. I think too many people will go naked, and just the math makes more sense over time adding somebody. So how much Garrett Wilson without Justin Fields? I think I feel decently comfortable throwing him out there without Justin Fields. The difficulty is, like you alluded to, the price tag on Fields is so low that even if Fields doesn't have the big rushing game, if he's feeding Garrett Wilson enough that Garrett Wilson is producing not even a tournament winning score, but like 20, 22, 24, like Fields is probably at least getting 16, 17, 18 because he's going to have some rushing in there. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that you could comfortably have a rule that 100% of Garrett Wilson has Justin Fields, but it's also not, I don't think it's bad mathematically to play Garrett Wilson without Justin Fields. I'll have both, obviously, Fields with Garrett Wilson with Fields and Garrett Wilson without.
We mentioned Justin Herbert when we were talking about some of the quarterbacks. Their wide receivers continue to be pretty intriguing, with Quentin Johnson kind of the surprise man in the pole position there. Ladd McConkey continues to struggle. Keenan kind of humming along as usual. Thoughts on how you would attack Herbert stacks, assuming you have some of those?
Yeah, I mean, QJ has been my guy this year. And it's one of those times, I always say, like, be willing to be too early at the risk, so you don't miss out on being too late. And it was one of those where it's worked out, right? Like, I've been early on Quentin Johnston, and this kind of felt like the week where the field would be like, oh, this guy's still 5,700. This is for real. And yeah, finally it's catching up here. Right. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's for real. I said last week that he's a 7K wide receiver, and the way he's being used in this offense, the way he looks right now, will he quite get there? I don't know, but he's going to be up in like the high 6Ks pretty soon. And the usage has been real, first reads and schemed usage and all that. And so, yeah, I like QJ this week. And I also think that, so Keenan Allen, for me, you're hoping for the touchdowns. He's not going to put up big yardage at this point in his career. So if he gets the touchdowns, great. If I have enough Herbert, I'll have some Keenan Allen. He's not a guy I'm isolating. I do think Ladd McConkey is going to have one of these games where they say, hey, let's give Ladd like 11 targets. Let's give him 13 targets. I don't think that's his role in this offense right now this year, but I think he's going to have games like that. And so last week, I was kind of like, and I'll play a bunch of Ladd as well. And then I think I ended up playing 0% Ladd McConkey and a ton of QJ. This week, I'm more starting to lean toward, like, this might be the week where it makes sense to play some Ladd McConkey, because there will be a week where the Chargers are going to say, like, hey, this guy's a big part of our offense too. Let's emphasize him in the game plan this week. Washington's been preparing for Quentin Johnston. Not that matters, because you got the ghost of Marshawn Lattimore out there, and Quentin Johnston's going to blow by him a couple times. But I do think I could see this being the week where they emphasize Ladd. And so it's not going to feel comfortable, but I'm definitely going to, like, force some Ladd exposure, like more than I would technically on paper want this week.
You mentioned QJ. Yeah, he's 5,700. He is going to be, I think, a fairly popular play. I'll throw out three other value plays in that 5K range and kind of get your thoughts on them. Chris Olave, death taxes and discussing Chris Olave. Michael Pittman Jr. had the Q tag, but did return to practice today, so should be okay. And then Jalen Waddle with no Tyreek Hill here at 5,400 versus the Panthers. Do you have a favorite of some of those options?
No, I wouldn't say I have a favorite. Those are guys who I don't love, but I'm going to have exposure to. Because Pittman's probably lowest of the ranks for me, because volume is really what you want with Pittman. And again, like, I think the Raiders will be competitive. It's hard for me to see them really driving this game in a way where the Colts are, going overboard with their volume. But I like Pittman. I had Pittman on my list. I actually kind of moved down to Alec Pierce, because it's like, if we're getting lower volume,
he's going to be out. I did just see. I saw
Pierce
that
is going to be out. Oh shoot!
Yeah,
Maybe
Pierce.
Mitchell
That
again.
was
Here we
another
go.
development. Yeah.
So yeah, then my like sketch for the player grid had Alec Pierce, and like last night I was like, I'm going to take Pittman out, put Pierce in. So yeah, I'm sort of iffy on this spot. Totally fine with the idea of playing Pittman. He's been on and off my player grid this week. Olave and Waddle, there was a roster that I came across last night in the Bank Machine, and I was like, man, I love this build. And it has both guys on it, but it was like a very high variance stack away from these guys. And so I was like, oh, this high variance stack hits. What I want is just points, like just secure points. I don't think we get super high ceiling on either of these guys, but I think we get the secure points on both these guys. Waddle less so, because I think people are overrating this Dolphins offense. I mean, Tyreek Hill last year was constantly under 14 DraftKings points, and now you don't have Tyreek. Like, yeah, now Waddle's the number one, but you don't have Tyreek Hill taking attention away from him. But I do think that Waddle is completely viable. I guess I'd rank Olave above him, but just slightly. And then two guys also in this price range. Well, actually, I'll throw three out there. Teteroa McMillan, as suspected, he's not a good fit for Bryce Young, but the volume continues to be there. The talent is there. I keep saying he's a 7K wide receiver with a bad quarterback. That his price probably won't get there, unlike QJ, but he is that level of talent. And so, there's going to be one of these blow-up games at some point. Jakobi Meyers, who we're on Colts, but like if the Colts are scoring points, then the Raiders are having to throw. There's going to be one of these games where things come together for this offense. Jakobi Meyers hits. And then Marvin Harrison Jr., where just like from the human element, we all saw, or most of us probably saw, his reaction after he scored that touchdown last week, where he like just knelt down. He wasn't knelt down praying. Like he just knelt down with his head in his arm, like relief, like just pure relief radiating off of him when he had that contested ball touchdown. He has all these mistakes, all this trouble, fans booing him early in that game. And now you're playing Tennessee, and it's like, wouldn't this be, 10 targets last week, wouldn't this be a spot where they would say, man, like, let's try to keep this going. Let's see if we can take this confidence and like keep ratcheting it up. And so from just a narrative perspective, I think Marvin Harrison, a guy who can see double-digit targets, who can put up 25 to 30 points, who has a big end zone role, I think he's very interesting in this price range as well.
Yeah, I like that shout out as well. And kind of when you were talking about it too, where it's like the Kyler floor has been so low, but the games where we have seen him reach that ceiling, he's bringing along multiple pass catchers. Right. And then this offense is like condensed. It's the McBride and Harrison show. So I'm with you. Like I'm going to keep getting back to it and until it hits. And this does seem like a pretty good spot for it. Any of these other is there anything under 5K you like? I mean, we always talk about how hard it is to find value, but you always have let's say even under 4,500. You got any special plays for us here? Yeah,
I mean, under 5K, you got JMO, who I really like just because I like the Lions this week. Yep. And, he's going to have some 25 to 27 point games this year. Trey Tucker is, continues to be used. He's always on the field. And then we get, below 4,500. Darius Slayton, I think we've got a shot there. Obviously, last week, it was Tebow ball with the Giants. They were like, all right, don't throw the ball too much. Let's have quarterback draws, RPOs. Let's do everything we can to just keep the ball on the ground. But eventually, you're going to have to throw the ball. And so Darius Slayton, I think, is viable down here. And then Troy Franklin, who has basically had the same usage as Cortland Sutton this year, just not the same production as Cortland Sutton this year. So Troy Franklin down here at 4K, another guy I like this week.
A couple mentions here from the chat. We haven't really discussed the Ravens at all. So maybe just like a quick macro note from you on how you think this offense functions with Cooper Rush, and then tie that into, could they actually, could Zay Flowers see more targets, with a guy like Rush behind center?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Cooper Rush is a good quarterback. What is he? He's like 9-4 in his career and starts, 9-5 in his career and his starts. And, they got him because if you're taking a quarterback who's a totally different style than your starter, then you've got to transform the playbook. That's clearly because you're like, well, this guy is still better. It's better to transform the playbook and have to go to a different style because this guy is better than the other options out there. Like, I think Cooper Rush is a good NFL backup. We got the Texans defense, though. Like, I am not picking on the Texans defense with anybody this year. And so to me, where the prices on Ravens haven't dropped, I'm not seeing myself like I had early week builds with Derrick Henry. I had early week builds with Zay Flowers. I was building some rosters yesterday with Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews. But I do think, just generally speaking, if I stay away from the Texans over time, I'm in good shape. And the Texans are basically the Texans are calling their games to the fact that their offense is bad and their defense is good. So there's not even like that opportunity for the Texans to score a bunch of points and elevate the scoring pace in this game, because the Texans don't want that. The Texans are like, oh, it's 4th and 1 at the 50. Let's punt because we've got a good defense. We play field position battle. We don't trust our offense. And so, it's just hard to see the game taking off in such a way that Sunday ends and you're like, oh, why didn't I play Zay Flowers? I couldn't win a tournament without him. That's how I'm looking at this spot this week.
One other one that's kind of an interesting shout here. Wanted to get your thoughts on Iomanor, as I continue to butcher that. Calvin Ridley questionable this week, and also just has not been playing well at all. Any thoughts on the rookie here?
Yeah, I mean, he's been a favorite play of mine down here in these cheaper price ranges, 7, 6, 5, and 7 targets. He's already the number one receiver on this offense. That if Calvin Ridley misses, then he's again the number one receiver on this offense. And I played him twice. I played him, I think weeks 2 and 3 was when I had decent exposure to him. And I'm sure I'll keep him in the pool and go back to the well this week because wide receiver is so wide open. And so I want to be taking shots on guys who can hit for big games. The downside of the argument against is like this offense is so bad, right? Like it is atrocious and it's non-aggressive. The matchup's not great, but yeah, I mean, if he's going to get 7+ targets with a downfield role at 4,100, there's value there. So yeah, totally fine with that play this week.
Yep. Good shout out there from FF Doom. Looks like we got over 500 people watching live. Appreciate all of you guys and the comments and the questions in the chat. If you guys aren't subscribed, please do so. We do this show every Friday afternoon at 1 p.m. Eastern. Immediately following this, we'll have the Bully the Sim show with Youdacao, and then we will have Off and On the Clock with John and Nez talking through the slate from an underdog perspective. If you're already subbed, go ahead and hit that like button. And I should also let you know, in addition to those shows, I do 2 more shows over the weekend for YouTube members. I do the Saturday night after dark shows. This week I'm having on Mathology. He famously had the best team in the regular season of the Underdog Best Ball Mania contest last year. Really sharp player who also qualified for the Dog Bowl. Excited to talk to him. And then Sunday mornings, we do the Cram. That's at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. We look at the overnight news. We go through everything, build some teams, look at the Sims, all of that stuff, and then react to Inactive's news. So very valuable show. We also do these ownership polls where I ask the chat their favorite players at each position, and it's been a really good gauge of sentiment. We were all over James Cook coming in way over projected ownership when 6 different people in the chat kept saying James Cook. So a nice show there as well for YouTube members. But Jam, let's head over to tight end. I've been a little, there's lots to talk about this week. I mean, the one that's been the thorn in my side, Jam, has been this Brock Bowers situation.
Right.
I didn't play him on DraftKings last week, but had a ton of him on Underdog. Clearly not healthy, has that brace, and now legitimately pops up on the injury report. Is he completely off your player pool?
Yeah. Well, okay. So here's the thing. Last year he topped, what was it? I think he topped like 23 points twice, right? And they were like blow up games, 30+ points. Everybody remembers them. You had to have them that week. It's a thin position, and Bowers puts the slate out of reach at this thin position. And then he had like a 23-point-something pointer, and then everything else was like 20 and below, right? And a lot of 14 points and 12 points and 15s, and kind of like those Keenan Allen scores where it's like, well, he's always getting double digits, so you always feel good about it. But it was rare, as it is with most players, it was rare that you had to have him, right? And so this could come back to bite me, but the way I'm treating Brock Bowers this week is basically like, if he shows the signs of life, just the math on it, like the probabilities of him showing those signs of life and posting the score you had to have are pretty low, right? So it won't surprise, like these guys get healthier over time. There's going to be a week where Bowers comes out, everybody's scared to play him, and he puts up like 18 points or 20 points. And it's like, hey, Bowers is back, you know? And my basically like just my bet right now is that will happen before the 30-pointer, and therefore I can play it safe and avoid him. But I don't have it. Like I would not talk anybody down for saying, no, I want to go to Bowers this week, because the 30-pointer is still in there. And this is the type of game environment where it could happen. So yeah, I don't plan to play him on my single entry 3-max this week, but I'm not going to talk down somebody who does want to play him.
Yep. Let's talk at the top end then. I'd say the 3 other guys people would pay up for would be obviously Trey McBride, the top tight end play on the slate, Ferguson and Warren there. Any thoughts on the high end?
Yeah, I mean, Ferguson, the only concern there is the volume, as we talked about, the potential for that game flow. I think he's tremendous play on a Fields roster, because then you're hoping the Fields is keeping this game competitive and the Cowboys are having to stay aggressive in that game. Really like Tyler Warren in this spot. It's hard to see either of these guys putting up like a monster tournament winning score, but at a position where you're going to take a lot of duds, I think either of these guys can put up a really strong score. And when you compare them to, wide receivers in their price range, they're pretty solid values realistically. So yeah, I like Ferguson. I like Tyler Warren. I like Trey McBride. Like I said, the Cardinals keep popping in projections and optimizers, and I don't love the play through this offense. And I probably prefer Marvin Harrison Jr. because it's leverage off of McBride, who will be popular. It's leverage off these other 5K or pivots off these other 5K wide receivers. So if he hits, it helps you more than McBride hitting. But that doesn't mean that he's likelier to hit, right? And so, yeah, I like McBride kind of layered in this week. For me, I think it's Tyler Warren and Jake Ferguson at the top, Trey McBride right below that. And then really like everything for me is kind of in this upper tier of pricing, because then you got Juwan Johnson and Laporta as kind of my plays below those guys.
Yeah, and it is a little tricky this week. I mean, you can kind of see it here on the screen. There's a ton of these other tight ends who have Q tags, not only Bowers, Goddard, Juwan Johnson, Darren Waller. There were a couple others here. Mason Taylor, who had a nice game and might be of some interest with Fields. So we'll have to monitor some of those. The chat, I've seen multiple mentions about Tommy Tremble. He had a pretty nice role last week with Jatavian Sanders out and basically just no other weapons in that passing game. Can you give the people some notes on Tommy Tremble?
Yeah, no, I'm on board with the Tommy Tremble play. If you're going down, I just scrolled down to see if we had an update on Jatavian Sanders. He's now out. No, I like the Tommy Tremble play down here. I honestly think if you're the Dolphins, you got to ramp up Darren Waller's, his rap career's over. He's back on the football field. You got to ramp up his snaps. He played 16 snaps last week. How high does he get? I don't know, 25, 30, but would it surprise us if he had like a 35 or 40 snap game? Not really. So I think Waller's viable down here. I think Tommy Tremble is viable down here. I think those are Isaiah likely played 25 snaps last week in his first game back. He could play 35 or 40 snaps this week. I think he's one of these guys that nobody's going to think about that could put up a big score. But outside of that, which is kind of, digging deep into the bin, I think Tommy Tremble and Darren Waller are these cheaper guys that I would have interest in. But, Juwan Johnson's 3,900. Tyler Warren's only 4,700. Ferguson's 4,800. So you're not saving that much in salary going all the way down. But I do think those guys are viable.
Yeah, it's one of those things when you kind of look at the value relative to, points per dollar, all the top values are also the high end guys. They are just kind of separating from some of them. What do you make of the Waller situation? Obviously he has the 2 touchdowns, but he also had a 40% targets per route run. So they were looking for him when he was out on the field. And then you lose Tyreek Hill. Thoughts on kind of what he is going to be in that offense?
Well, yeah, I mean, Waller was such a great player, right? Injuries derailed his career, but what was it? He had a year with like 90 catches in there with the Raiders and a very wide receiver-like body. So we look at last year where Mike McDaniel's a very sharp offensive mind, right? I mean, nobody denies that, even if he's maybe not the best head coach. And last year when this downfield passing wasn't working, what did he do? He figured out, all right, how do we use Jonnu Smith in the underneath areas of the field to strain the defense? And Jonnu Smith all of a sudden is popping in 20-point game after 20-point game. And then for whatever reason, they got rid of Jonnu Smith and signed Darren Waller off the streets. And they're like, no, this is our guy now. Like, I very much think that we fast forward 2 or 3 weeks, we're going to see Darren Waller as a pretty big schemed part of this passing attack. The question is just how quickly can you ramp up from not playing for over a year to playing, 40 plus snaps is kind of my question on Waller. So I'm totally fine with the Waller play. It takes a leap of faith, and it shouldn't surprise if he only sees like 20, 22 snaps this week. But if he's able to get up into that higher range of snaps, he certainly has the upside and opportunity to be able to produce here.
All right. I think it is time for us to build a lineup. We are going to open up the app. Let's roll up our sleeves. It's building blocks time. All right, Jam, we kind of teased this. We very suspiciously skipped over discussing Jared Goff. You kind of let the cat out of the bag when we hit Amon-Ra St. Brown. Let the people know where we're starting here.
Yeah, so we talk about building rosters that can finish all the way to the left or all the way to the right. So in the app, that means your little bubble being all the way to the right for first place, all the way to the left for last place. You can also see this visualized representation in Sims, where you run the Sims in the Bink machine and it pulls up a graph of where you would finish. And so I had this roster last night that popped up, and it was when I looked at the view of like the ROI view, it was finishing in the top 1% of tournaments 2.6% of the time. It was finishing in the bottom 1% of the tournament almost 5% of the time. More important than just finishing in the top 1%, 2.6% of the time, it was finishing in the top 0.1%, 0.56% of the time. So basically like 5x as likely as the average roster to finish in the top 0.1%, 5x as likely as the average roster to finish in the bottom 1%, finish all the way to the left, all the way to the right. And that is a Goff stack, but we're not just taking Goff and one pass catcher. We're not just taking Goff and two pass catchers, but Goff and three pass catchers. So Goff, Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Sam Laporta. So, and I can hear the retching noises from the audience as I say it. But the idea here is you are betting on one of these games that we've seen from Goff, that we understand the Lions don't need an opponent to keep pace in order to put up one of these games. And we've seen these games from Goff in the past where he throws 5 touchdown passes and 300 plus yards on minimum volume, right? He's still going to throw it under 30 times, but he can throw for 300 plus yards and 5 touchdown passes. And they can win this game, 45-17 or something like that, where they're scoring 6 touchdowns on offense and 5 of them are coming through the air. And if 5 of them are coming through the air, there's a chance that all of these guys are hitting, right? And so that's where you get this all the way to the left or all the way to the right type of roster, because there's also a very likely scenario where Goff throws 1 touchdown and 230 yards and like all 4 of these players underwhelm. But if we get the reverse of that, where the touchdowns are coming through the air, nobody's playing the stack with all these guys, and this ends up being the stack you had to have in order to win. And so, just a really fun block this week for not just large field tournaments. Like I'm fine with this in like contests with 500 entries, and I'll be rolling this out in some single entry 3 max this week. And there's a lot of fun that you can have beyond this point as well. So Goff, Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta. Pete, what do you got? What are your thoughts?
I love it. They're the highest scoring offense in the league. They have the highest team total on this slate, nearly 30 points. The Bengals are atrocious. And like you said, when we see this team hit, they hit together. It just so happened that the last time Jared Goff went nuts, it was really concentrated on Amon-Ra St. Brown. It was like those two just gobbled up all of the points, but you can certainly see scenarios where Jameson Williams gets going, Sam Laporta gets going. And the thing about JMO, he's been a little bit of a roller coaster from his usage perspective, but kind of flew under the radar last week just because he only scored 5.7 points, but 8 targets, had a 26% target share. That bodes well for a little regression. And we know he can house stuff easily there as a big play artist. So I love it. And I think the other thing about this is Goff at 6,500, he is just not going to project well from a median standpoint. And I think his ownership will stay in check because of that. And people will mainly be playing one of the running backs. They'll play a one-off JMO, a one-off Amon-Ra St. Brown, but just loading up and onslaughting this, I think will be relatively unique unless the block party reach is just more powerful than we even realize. Yeah,
the block party reach is not more powerful. You know what? Because when people see stuff like this, it's like, oh yeah, that's interesting. And then you go to build and you're like, but I'm not actually doing that. So, this will definitely be unique this week. Pete, you got any thoughts on where you want to go next on this roster? Because we can really go anywhere that we want.
Yeah, so we have 5,300. Do we want to put a defense in and see where that kind of leaves us?
Yeah,
here?
I'm good with that. I think a lot of people will go down to the Saints. I'm interested in going to the Texans just because they're same price range. But, you got a better defense against a better offense, but a backup quarterback. And I think that there's a decent chance that we get a few points of edge here with the Texans, while also, saving the salary to give us a lot of flexibility elsewhere on this roster. We can also go with one of the cheaper running backs, which will just really open up our options elsewhere, right? Because I'm sure we can layer in like an Olave or a Waddle or something like that, where we just feel comfortable with the points we're getting at wide receiver, but that'll give us room for like a JSN and a high price running back. So let's throw Rachaad White onto this roster and see what it ends up opening up for us.
Yeah, 47, Rachaad White. You mentioned just kind of how high of a floor he has with that pass catching. So that leaves us 6,400 for a running back, a wide receiver, and a flex. So yeah, you could go down to one of those 5K wide receivers and then kind of get 2 other high-end plays, or you could go more balanced here.
My thought originally was that we might be able to get an Olave and then still fit in Achane and JSN. I think we might be like 200 off on that, which means we could go down to the Saints instead of the Texans. We are going to be 200 off on that. So we can go from the Texans down to the Saints and sacrifice that because that's not a huge thing that we're trying to do here. But what we end up with here is we have basically like a lot of chalk, right? We have Rachaad White, we have Devon Achane, we have Chris Olave, we have Jackson Smith and Jigba, And all of this chalk is guys who are chalk because of their usage and their floor for points, right? And so we basically have this type of roster. This is kind of how you want to build a roster like this, is you say, I've done enough to be different and I've taken on my risk. If my stack hits, it's hitting big. So then the idea is just don't mess it up the rest of the way. And so we just take plays that have comfortable usage projections that the field is going to be on, and we're separating with our 4-player stack instead of trying to separate at these onesie spots. And so layering in something like this is just a really sharp way to handle the rest of a build like this, where we're just basically straight chalk the rest of the way, and combinations of players that lots of people will have. But our 4-player stack is what we're hoping will be our differentiator here in this spot.
As usual, because I see some comments in here, people wanting us to swap in Pittman for Olave. The beauty of this, guys, is you can use this as your own launch point for building your lineups, where you can put Pittman in for Olave. In fact, JM, they can do whatever they want. That is the beauty of this country for now. And what you can do on DraftKings.com is you could really play whoever you want. So take some of the ideas you like, discard the ones you don't. There were a couple notes in here. I do have to call this out because this has come up multiple times. I wrote about it in the Fantasy Life newsletter because there's a lot of enthusiasm for Sean Tucker. He obviously went nuts last year when Rachaad White was out, and that was pre-Bucky Irving breakout. It was against the Saints. He went absolutely nuclear. My take on it has been Sean Tucker's an awesome season-long stash. I think if Bucky Irving is out for multiple weeks, we could see his role grow from like a base work perspective. But this week, to me, it's like clearly going to be the Rachaad White show.
Yeah, that's my take. And I mean, this is the type of play that the larger the tournament field you're in, the more value there is in it, right? So this is the type of play that wins the Millie Maker, right? Where people are like, oh, no, but it's Rachaad White this week. And then we're all surprised. And Sean Tucker does it and puts up a big score. You've got a couple, like, you got a big uphill climb here because first you need Sean Tucker to get the work. Then you need him to do well in a tremendously difficult matchup at Seattle against one of the best defenses in the NFL. And then you need him to do well enough that he's outscoring all these other good, cheap running backs. Because it's not like, I mean, there's all these guys at 6K, right, are still good running backs that if they're putting up 22 and Sean Tucker puts up 22 at a cheaper price tag, you're not gaining significant edge. So you need like the blow up Sean Tucker game, which probably requires a Rachaad White injury, or just like they completely trick us and there's no Rachaad White. It's all Sean Tucker. And so, yeah, I mean, that was certainly like a thought process I went through earlier in the week. I'm comfortable not playing Sean Tucker on tighter builds, but I would say, yeah, you can swing for the fences in large field play with a small percentage of builds. Or, you know, if you think you have an edge, put that onto your hand builds for single entry 3 max. Not a place I'm going, but yeah, I love that angle for sure as far as thinking through that one.
One other loose end on this one, because I generally do ask you about this when we do a stack. Shorty asking, would you ever throw Jamar Chase on a lineup like this? Clearly part of the thesis, right, is that the Lions don't need to be pushed to drop 40 points, right. But what is your thoughts on a bring back?
Yeah, I mean, you can completely justify the bring back, and you could even say garbage time. You could say whatever. And you could also say, like, maybe this is a week where you don't need Chase to put up 35 for him to be a useful player, right? If this is a week where it's hard to get 20 points from wide receivers and Chase puts up 25, 26, yeah, you overpaid for it, but that might not matter. That might be actually a score that is useful enough to help you win a tournament. So I'm totally fine playing Chase on this build, but you absolutely do not need a bring back because the Lions can win these games going away. They're perfectly happy to score as many points as they can score. And when we can identify a team that's willing to do that, then we can take advantage of that by just saying, who cares what the other team does? This team is going to keep trying to score points. So yeah, I'm fine with Chase. I'm certainly not forcing Chase. And if I have one of these that I'm putting in a single entry 3 max, say I put like 10% of my bankroll for the week on one Goff onslaught, it probably won't have Jamar Chase on it this week.
Yep. Yeah, and we talked about it from a salary perspective, and it's just like even the game environment, knowing that the Lions don't need Chase going crazy to get pushed or whatever, it's like, man, JSN versus Chase. It's just like that's probably the decision you're making in this lineup.
Right, and you could go Achane down to Amari and Hampton. You could go JSN up to Jamar Chase. Like, the salary works. There's ways to do it and still really like the roster. So I think it's viable, but I don't think it's necessary, and it's not necessarily part of the bet I'm making here this week.
All right, JN, this was a blast as usual. Everybody needs to check out 1 week season. Take advantage if you want with their Bink machine, the 50% off plus the additional 20% off with promo code Pete. Any other final words here before we roll into Bully the Sims, Jam?
No, always fun and looking forward to this weekend. Looking forward to being back with you next week.
Perfect. Well, we will see you next Friday for the block party. Good luck in week 5. It's now time for Bully the Sims. Peace out, Jam. All right, Youdacao back in the saddle for Bully the Sims. No brick, no nerdy tenor this week. Just you and I running a little 2-man game. How you doing?
Good to be back.
Yeah, and you had, based on some of the screenshots I saw, a pretty nice week last week with the Michael Penix stuff.
Yeah, cooking a little bit right now. Got there on the Penix last week. I don't think quarterback really did too much. So, do you have the lineup?
Yeah, let me pull this up. I was just getting it up here. And I need to change my screen share, get this flipped over and all of that good stuff here. Let me see here. So yeah, it was a Penix. What was it? A triple stack here?
Not triple stack. It would be Kyle Pitts flex. And I'm guessing Lions D.
Gotcha.
Really just straightforward on the double. It's not even one that I really vetted. A lot of the late stuff, it's more on what the swap would allow, because if you notice, all my afternoon games are Giga Chalk with the CMC Genti Puka. And so just great start. I'm assuming not too many remaining lineups with a good start are gonna have these 3 one-offs, which are already good plays on their own. Genti I did sort of as a one-off, just with his regression that could happen, as well as being heavily touchdown dependent when Brock Bowers, Jakobi Meyers are pretty chalk. So there was an appeal to that as a one-off rather than really getting too deep into that game.
Yeah, and it's funny too, because I know you've historically have been willing to run out some of the onslaughts. I did see some of the other Michael Penix teams that were a triple stack that included Bijan, and he caught that receiving TD that would have been viable, but you didn't need it with.
Well, I was exactly talking about it wasn't the best sort of game environment, but given the pricing, they get there at efficiency, and that's just what happened.
Yeah.
Especially the pocket passer with Penix. He's not going to run for one. If he throws for 300 and it's to your guys, Bijan does have that receiving element in a big way. So it's really he gets the ball out to his guys. They could do all the work, right? He has all that talent around him. He doesn't even have to play a great game himself to support 3 big performances like this.
Yep. What contest was this?
This is the 3-3-3, so it's probably a 5,000 man.
Okay. Very good. Yeah, here for the audio listeners, it was Penix, CMC, Genti, Puka, Drake London, Quentin Johnston, Hunter Henry, Kyle Pitts, and Lions defense there. So like you said, just jamming in the best plays around that contrarian stack. We are going to look forward now to week 5. We've kind of hit our stride here, formalized the show topic. So what you guys can look forward to, we're going to talk about some of the inputs where there might be volatility this week, where you might want to make some assumptions that the baseline projections aren't. We'll then talk about Youda's favorite game environments. We'll talk about some chalk that he's either into or wants to fade, maybe a contrarian game stack or two. And then at the end, we'll go through Run the Sims. I ran some Sims right before we went live, and we can kind of see where those ideas line up and maybe some lineups that match up with Youda's takes for this slate. So Youda, let's start here with the inputs and this overall slate here. We obviously have the bye weeks hitting. We have a lot of injury situations, and I think that's where we want to start here, specifically with the running back injuries, right?
Yeah, the running back injuries starting to happen is going to create more input volatility situations. So it would be Carolina with Hubbard out. That's kind of an interesting game to me because Miami's season is effectively over and Carolina's season hasn't even really started. So it's like, it's actually might as well be a week 1 game. And with the Carolina one, I don't know if Hubbard gets owned. Maybe if Dowdle gets owned, because I would have to wait and see on like how opinion shakes out with Dowdle versus like the other cheap running back chalk. And I think the other cheap chalk would be like
Rachaad White.
Yeah, Rachaad White. Dowdle versus White, I'm not sure how people think, but ETN isn't really like, I think most would have it like 70-30 Dowdle. I'm not sure ETN isn't like 50-50 or 60-40.
Yeah.
And if they really want to sort of get like all their young guys together, the guys that like in theory would be the next good Carolina team, reps together, it might even be in their best interest to kind of get ETN out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is actually we have the opportunity here where we can adjust the inputs ourselves, because it doesn't look like the push has gone through for Cheaper being out. So how much of this rushing work would you assign to Rico and to ETN here? We can kind of build this ourselves.
Well, I would actually think it like the most likely outcome to me is like a 65-35 as far as like touches.
With ETN being on the 35 side.
Yeah. So it would really, it would be like in this spot, it would be like ETN's new Dowdle and Dowdle's now Hubbard, essentially.
Right. That it just kind of easily.
But that's like the market view. I'm just not sure it's not like 50-50 or even, in like once the game script gets a little bit different than what people expect. I kind of think Dowdle doesn't really have too much pass catching juice.
Yeah.
Whereas like if you're not really in a true running situation, like I kind of think they'd rather go ETN for like these third down or like 2-minute snaps. But I don't know. This is why it's like volatile stuff.
Yeah, and I guess, do you have any thoughts on just like the talent profile on Rico? Obviously at 4,300, you don't.
It's not good. He's going to be like a career backup. He's like year 4 or year 5 or something. Not to say that ETN is like a lock to be something, but at least it's like the unknown is better than the sort of known mid in Rico Dowdle.
Yeah, and what do we think here? The Rico Dowdle ownership, he's probably going to be, I don't know, you thinking like the 15% range probably? Something
like that.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, we've made some tweaks here with the Rico and ETN. I guess the interesting thing on the volatility, like you said, is like if they are in a negative game script, and Rico's coming off the field for ETN, that really hurts that play if he's not getting the majority of the receiving work.
Right. And he's not really a known pass catcher. He is just like a solid guy who's not really going to make a mistake, but he's not going to do anything extra for you.
Yep. So of those guys, you mentioned Rachaad White. We'll take a look here at the Cardinals situation in a second, but where do you kind of envision yourself? Do you see yourself as like a full fade of this Carolina running back situation, or are you intrigued?
From a game theory perspective, it would be inclined to fade, but you still have to cover your bases a little bit. I mean, we can get to it later, but I kind of prefer like the pass game in this game. So we could probably go to like the Arizona spot for running back because it's like a similar idea.
Yeah. So obviously Trey Benson headed to IR. We are going to get Michael Carter as the lead back. Amari DiMarcado has been operating as the pass catching back, and so now everybody's kind of wondering who is going to be the lead back here. What are your thoughts?
So I guess it seems we are evenly split with the Benson already zeroed out. I'm pretty sure the market has Carter as a 1A by a small margin. It's a Spider-Man meme here. They've career-wise, they've been in the same role, just on different teams. always been used as pass down, but now someone has to carry the ball. Given that the market actually thinks Carter's a little ahead, for one, I think DeMarcado is not only is he bigger, he's probably been a better runner in the past. Now that could just be because he's playing that thunder and lightning role where the backup is always going to get more yards per carry if they get these carries. And Carter, like, he just like doesn't even really get carries. Like on the Jets, he never really got those carries as like the third down back. So I don't really know, but like my view is that DeMarcado is kind of a decent runner, and Carter's best season might have been his rookie year. So again, like coaching, like assuming coaching can make good decisions, it's like if it was me, I would probably go 1A DeMarcado.
Interesting. Do you think game script will ultimately depend on it as far as Carter being more early down, favorable game script, Amari? And
I don't know, because they're the same guy almost as far as like how they've been used. But if the market's going to think one thing and I'm really not sure, I would probably take the other side. But we can wait and see because I don't know how the market is going to think until like tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah, because what I'm hearing with you on both of these spots with like ETN and DeMarcado, and maybe you liking the 1B back slightly more than the market, it kind of just makes all of them like fades and plays to mostly avoid, it sounds like.
Not if it's in the context of a game script. Because if I'm taking a little bit of Miami offense, like a Waddle, it's probably more likely I want the pass catcher that I think is going to be the guy getting check downs if they're trailing.
I guess the only other thing would be, is there too much of an opportunity cost at running back on this slate to be dealing with these plays?
I'm not sure because White even, it's not like he's like a smash. He might be projected for 13 or 14. So
yeah,
at ownership, not necessarily. And then once you factor in game correlation, and for example, like it could actually be volatile to the point where DeMarcado is 70%.
Yeah.
Because that's how he was used last week. I actually don't know how the market arrived to Carter being the lead. But
yeah,
that's what it says.
I think that's a really good point. I think everyone's kind of pigeonholing him into the lead back role, but like you said, with their profiles, like Michael Carter was the pass catching back on the Jets. Like when he came into the league, him and Amari are actually pretty similar, and Amari's been the guy they've trusted all season. So it does seem like a spot where you could get one up on the field if everyone's making that assumption.
Yeah.
I'm
actually just like assigning some credence to what they're saying, because if it was me, I wouldn't even have that.
Gotcha. You're saying you would have it fully flipped, Amari and Carter, basically?
It would be like if I was making the decision, it would be 60-40, but I assume the market is like saying this for a reason.
Yeah.
Like via like some, like maybe the coach said something or like reporting.
Why don't I, just for when we rerun the Sims later, where I obviously updated the Chuba Enrico one, I'll go ahead and flip these as well. Just to, when we run the Sims, I think it will be interesting to see how much of these pop up. But I think that could be a fun angle for us to see if Amari is showing up at all.
Yeah.
But let's head back to that Miami-Carolina game. You mentioned here that this could be a spot you're interested, but maybe more so through the passing game. Obviously not the juiciest total at 44 here, but what are your kind of game thoughts about how this could go?
For Carolina, that total actually is kind of juicy.
Okay.
Since their total is 21.5.
True.
It's very good for them. It's just like I'm always into like early season, just spots where guys haven't really been allowed to show up yet. And that's very much the case for Carolina offense. Like, have they won a game yet?
I don't believe they have.
Oh no, in the game they won, they didn't need to play offense. They blew out the Falcons.
Oh yeah.
Playing having the ball on the Falcons side the whole game. Yeah, so I just kind of think like stats over the course of a season always regress to like something reasonable. And if Panthers so far have dust for numbers right now, it's almost as if like even if they don't have to get there in a big way, it kind of like goes even more in that direction than necessary. Like you could call it stat padding or whatever, but like I think these guys want to get their numbers. But Miami's kind of in shambles. Like you could easily see them like sort of give up a little bit. Ted McMillan's having a great year. He's really just waiting on Bryce Young to show up because they haven't even really been able to maintain the possession. And Young, in sort of his own right, he was really good at the end of the last season. So it's not as if he can't perform.
As far as like how you would stack Bryce Young, is it just Ted Arroyo, or would you include like a Tommy Tremble if Jatavian Sanders is out again?
Yeah, I don't mind the Tremble, but Bryce Young is so low that you don't really need to double stack it. And like even like either running back, right? Because it's like they're also rather cheap that if they happen to score 3 or 4 touchdowns to that point, it wouldn't be really a negative correlation probably because their pricing is so low that like just scoring a touchdown for Carolina is probably involves everybody doing well relative to price.
And this kind of checks the box of what you did with that Penix lineup, right? Where you play the contrarian stack early and then you're able to just kind of jam some
a little bit similar because Tet isn't necessarily contrarian, but Bryce Young, Penix were.
Would you use a Dolphins piece as a bring back or play just the Panthers?
Sure.
Side?
Like you could do whatever you want if you do Bryce Young because Bryce Young is 3%.
Mm-hmm.
If you really get into like a big shootout though, might be, I mean, I don't really know because Dowdle is so cheap, but in a lot of spots where it becomes a true shootout, you don't really want Dowdle that much.
Mm-hmm. Do you have like, just from a perspective, if you are trying to think of game stacks, do you gravitate more to like a Waddle to speed the game up, or would you be fine with an Achane on the other side?
Oh, you can do both because Achane's a pass catcher.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be, even if Achane or Waddle isn't speeding it up, Achane's definitely playing catch up with dump offs. Waddle could like be playing against like soft coverages, or Waddle could speed it up and Bryce Young has to catch up. There's a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, when we move on to the lineups a little bit later, we'll definitely pick out some Bryce Young stacks. I think we've talked about it a little bit with like the sim stuff. Would you like boost the projection to get more Bryce Young, or would you pick out your favorite Bryce Young lineups there?
Yeah, I naturally would boost things to the point where I don't have to sort of filter by quarterback. I would rather like start seeing them naturally because then it's at least all my other rules that I put in are being applied. And it's not just actually just jamming Bryce Young. Another angle actually would be if you do Panthers D, Dowdle, since Waddle and Achane are pretty owned. And then you just go play for like Miami systemic meltdown. You could see that happen because they might be giving up already. Coach might get fired. In the past, we've seen at least the elite version of Tyreek Hill have like that Steph Curry spacing effect where if he's off the field or Steph is off the floor, just the threat of Tyreek and Steph was so high that systemically the team can't even do anything anymore. And so like the role and the efficiency for these guys, or the role will go up for these guys, but the efficiency gets hit to the point that production doesn't even go up. And it's going to look ugly, right? Dowdle and the Panthers, it's going to be ugly, but like,
yeah,
you know, they're so cheap and then the other side is so owned that actually it's the opportunity cost is nothing, and you win something if you're right.
Yeah, I like that. And that not getting overconfident, the points come through the passing game, but there are the game scripts where they just dominate, and it's a Rico Carolina.
They already won a game 30-0 this year. So
yeah. All right. I like that angle. I have a feeling the crew's going to want to tail you on that one after the Michael Penix kind of vomit stack last week. Let's talk a little bit about some chalk here. I know you were looking at the Colts a little bit, 7-point home favorites here versus the Raiders, 48-point total. What were you seeing?
Just that this whole team is going to be chalkish. 27 total. Like I had to double take with Indiana on the 27 total. But yeah, they've been playing lights out. Offensive line's cooking. I might be more inclined to play away from it as far as with all these guys. I think we're a little light on these ownerships. Maybe. No, it looks about right. Specifically, it's just like Taylor, and I guess Warren's pretty high too. With Indiana, I think they have enough guys involved in the offense that scoring 27 even, it doesn't guarantee DFS success. Because Taylor can just get rushing touchdowns. Jones can run something in. And last week, at least against the Rams, it was a good defense, but at least there was like pushback and like signs of resistance against this Indy offense, to the point that you can't rule out that like the book might be getting out on Daniel Jones.
Yeah, his points have gone down every single week since week one. But the team total is definitely hard to ignore.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just saying I'm cautious about the 27 because it doesn't have to be like you don't really know who it's going through.
Mm-hmm.
Like Josh Downs, AD Mitchell, you wouldn't be surprised if they do a little bit. And just even like Taylor accounting for a lot of it, like Taylor can get there and then his teammates don't really get there. Like I've started to do a max one of Taylor Jones because both of them are liable to run for a touchdown.
Yeah, they definitely strike you as that kind of like Hurts, Barkley, or Lamar, Henry pairing where they just really eat into their high ceilings.
Yep. Genty, even other side.
Yeah.
I don't feel confident about that really, but that would be the contrarian side of this if you think Raiders can play a little bit of ball control.
Which is kind of what happened last week, where Genty kind of cratered all that chalk and just dominated.
That's what they probably want to do as the big underdog.
Do you have any thoughts on the Jets chalk? Because I think that's going to be the other big one. Fields, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson.
Not too much, but it's like how it would happen. Like if they succeed, it is through two of these guys at least. So it's kind of straightforward. I don't really know how to play this angle.
Yeah.
Certainly a good spot. And I can't even say like Fields and Breece, they're so cheap. You can't even really say that the ceiling gets capped there. Because at least Hall, he can definitely produce in the pass game. Fields doesn't love to check down, and he normally does siphon some equity from his running backs, but it's cheap enough that even if he does, it might not matter that much. And then they only have one receiver, so it's hard to avoid.
Yeah, so is that a spot you think you just kind of match the field and there's
Something
no kind
like
of
that. I think so. I'm trying to see if there's even anything you can do on Dallas. No, because like I guess you can hope like a Javonte Williams slows the game down. But even like playing Dallas offense, that's not really bad for like Fields, Wilson.
Yeah.
Like even Pickens is probably in a pretty good spot.
I've seen some people talking about Sauce Gardner. Is he a corner that you try to steer away from?
Not anymore. And they play a lot of man coverage. He's been mediocre in a long enough sample that I'm not really worried about him.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a few other kind of contrarian game stacks here that you might be interested in. You talked about Seattle. You were messaging me before the show. What are you seeing with them?
Oh, so with Seattle, the market's just undervaluing Seattle. To this point, even, they've been one of the best teams on both sides of the ball. Coaching is doing well. Darnold is turning JSN into Justin Jefferson. Just the market's undervaluing Seattle. The game flow isn't even that appealing. Like, the pricing isn't that great, other than maybe JSN. Darnold a little bit, maybe Cup. Like, you don't really, on Tampa side, right? It's like maybe White obviously in play. And that would actually be correlated to Seattle. Godwin had like sneaky full snaps last week, but was not performing well. Mostly it's a commentary on the line, 3.5, or sometimes some places -3. It's Seattle might be like a top 7 team. And in this form, Tampa's like in the middle of the pack. So
that's the so maybe less of a DFS angle, but you like Seattle -3.5.
Well, it would apply to DFS just because I think they can easily win by 14. So it could happen to the offense or it could happen to the defense, but I think I don't really understand the market line there.
Do you have any thoughts on the running back situation? Would you get to some Kenneth Walker?
I'm just in that, like, you can't. That's actually an opportunity cost. It's just the low ownership would not make up for this pricing.
And they seem still kind of stubborn with wanting to use Sharps.
Yeah.
So that's
the only case would be if you go Seahawks and then just take Walker, because they're much more correlated.
Mm-hmm. And so otherwise, from a DFS angle, it's pretty much just like skinny stacks, Darnold and JSN.
Or I guess Cup is okay, and I guess Godwin, White even.
Yeah. Yep. Do you think, a lot of people are excited about Sean Tucker. He had that explosion game last year when White was out. What kind of split do you envision here between these two?
That looks right. Because they definitely trust White a lot more.
Yeah. For the audio listeners here, the inputs, we got it pulled up on Run the Sims. 56% rushing market share for Rashad, 25% for Sean Tucker. Much bigger TD market share for Rachaad White, 45% to 23%. And then a decent receiving market share, 12.5% for White versus 3.7% for Tucker. Any thoughts on Igbuka? I've seen some conversation about him of like, is he just running hot on touchdowns now? Would he be a guy you'd consider at 6,900?
Of course he's running hot on touchdowns. I wasn't going to play him last week, so I'm not going to play him this week.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when it's like that high relative to projection, it's kind of like only game stacks. In my opinion, never one off.
Yeah.
But that makes sense because he's getting in through your correlation. He's not getting in through your projection.
Yeah. Can you expand on that as far as like only game stacks? Because that's always just people
because
never
the
know.
Context in which he actually gets there relative to a price that's too high, it's just really likely that the game is popping off. You like if you're gonna get low projection or 7K Ibuka, so low relative to price projection on that, you might as well just bring something in the game along with it. Otherwise, it's not worth that risk as a one-off.
Yeah, that makes sense. Any other of these games or situations you want to touch on before we maybe look at some lineups here?
Probably just Washington again.
Yeah.
Chargers just had a bad loss. If I liked, I was all over Chargers last week, and I liked Falcons against Washington last week. I'm going to like Chargers here. Yeah. Also, like specifically after Omari and Hampton had a big game, he might be kind of chalk. I'm just going to take Chargers pass game again.
Yep.
Yep.
Any thoughts going back here to the lad well?
Yeah, of course. Back to the well on Lad. I was like, he was actually brutal on the field last week. So up until this point, it was just like he wasn't really getting his looks, but he was performing fine. Last week, he kind of got his looks and performed terribly. Some drops. So that might have been his worst game since he came into the league. So there's a little bit of Brian Thomas going on with him after that game. But I mean, I'll keep buying until I'm obviously wrong.
Yeah, and I mean, now the prices have all converged. He's much cheaper than he was last week. It looks like the ownership. I think there's still going to be a pretty big gap between him and QJ and ownership. Or do you think they'll be this close?
I think we're modeling. We might be modeling like the target share a little bit, like leaning into that, which isn't wrong. But the model doesn't really account for like Lad being really good in a sample last year.
Yeah.
But like last week, Johnson was a little higher owned than I thought. Lad wasn't even that contrarian.
Yeah.
So like every week it gets a little more like plays into like people giving up on Lad more than the previous. But it's probably not going to be like Lad is still at these prices. Lad would still probably be the highest owned because people are aware of like things, the type of idea I'm saying too.
Yeah.
And they're not really capitulating yet. It's still early enough.
It's not it's never a perfect 1-for-1, but as like a reference in the weekly drafts on Underdog, like QJ has an ADP of 19, gets drafted in every one, and Keenan and Lad have like ADPs in the 34, 35, like not ever getting drafted. Okay. So like market sentiment, like people are definitely on board with QJ as the lead dog right now.
Interesting.
Yeah. Thoughts on the Commanders? I mean, they're really banged up. I don't know if we have a practice report on Debo. Hopefully Jaden back. Thoughts on them?
Jaden should be back. Not too many because I guess Ertz is playable.
Yeah. His routes really dropped last week.
What was that?
His routes dropped last week. Do you think that's just a function of like Mariota being in and not too sticky there?
I couldn't be. I'm not certain on that. Mm-hmm. But I think it could be a variety of reasons. Like I would assume his baseline's still around 80%.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 83% average on the season, and then. Yeah, actually, it wasn't too bad. Actually, I'm misremembering that he was still at 81%.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind running back one of these like Debo or Ertz with like Chargers playing a lot of zone.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's. I'm running the Sims here. We did make some of those tweaks there. We fixed the Rico. We flipped Amari DeMarcado and Michael Carter to see if we could get that to pop up. I didn't do anything boosting Bryce Young here, but we'll take a look at some of these lineups and get some thoughts. Someone had asked about the Lions here in the chat. You do see Jared Goff, Amon-Ra, J-Mo, Laporta, which is coincidentally the team we built with JM right before you came on with the block party. What do you think about the Lions spot here?
That's impressive. I mean, they do have like 5 guys that at cost aren't bad if you apply the total. But good on you guys to get the top QB stack here for Sims.
Yeah.
I haven't thought too much about them because I try to like block out thinking about the Bengals right now.
Why is that?
It's just not exciting.
But facing their defense is exciting.
Yeah. I mean, like it's almost as if like the market is projecting the same script that they just had. So, I don't know. It's like, I don't really think 3 guys can get there. If there's even like 1 guy getting 2 touchdowns, really, it's kind of hard.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like they've done it already in like, I think their week 2 game. And then they showed out really well against like a good team in Baltimore. So they're just a really good regular season team. But at a certain point, the pricing gets up high enough that it does become hard.
I did want to tab over to just the player exposure here, and we are seeing Rico show up a decent bit, 9.7% optimal rate. Obviously, this ownership will come up a little bit, but that's going to provide some leverage. Even with the tweaks on Amari DiMercato, he's only showing up 2.2% of the time.
It's higher than the market, though.
Yeah.
I'll say maybe for the Lions, I do like the David Montgomery narrative a little bit, the hometown stuff.
And the sister stuff.
Yeah, all that. Since it's like super low resistance, they can do whatever they want in theory. Why not try to jam a touchdown when they're up by 10 in the fourth quarter?
Yeah, and I assume like if you were playing that, like if you're playing golf stacks, you would always have Montgomery separate from that.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
Right. They're not coming in super owned though, so there isn't like you're not like gaining too much on the field by like Montgomery touchdown. You're not like siphoning a huge Gibbs ownership, anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But he is pretty, I guess he does spike because he's so touchdown dependent, and he does have like 2-3 touchdown games every year.
When I look at quarterback exposures, it's a lot of guys we've talked about, but one we haven't here at the top is Kyler Murray. What do you think about this spot for the Cardinals?
It's a little straightforward because it comes with like the McBride ownership that's always there. The game flow could be rather slow. Price is great. So if he actually is that, what does it say he's on that?
8%.
8%. Yeah, at 8%, 10 games, that's a good play.
Yeah.
It's just you want to spread it out between like Marvin. He has 2 pass catching backs now, so maybe sprinkle some of those guys in with them. Because like it could even be like if our play-by-play is sharp enough, it could be factoring that Connor's not going to rush for a goal line touchdown. Kyler's more likely to get that goal line look now, or throw it to one of the running backs.
It is interesting. The fourth lineup here is a naked Kyler.
Yeah.
Which I assume, like you said, the majority of Kyler lineups are going to come preloaded with McBride.
Yeah. Yeah, but this Harrison's not expensive, so I kind of favor that a little.
Yeah. All right. Should I see if I can find us a Bryce Young team here?
Yeah.
All right. Bryce Young. Okay, there's a couple up here with over 100% EV. I'll read one off here. Bryce, Achane, we talked about that. Breece Hall, Olave, Devontae Smith. That's going to be contrarian. Ted Arroyo, Tyler Warren, Gibbs, Saints D. That looks pretty fun.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about Olave. But I do like that Giants are pretty wide receiver 1 friendly, and he definitely has a wide receiver 1 role. And just with the Giants total being higher than normal, the Saints total is also much higher than their usual. So,
what do you think the top 2 Bryce Young lineups? And it could just be like a random quirk, but they both include Devontae Smith.
That's just random, probably. It's probably random.
Yeah, I assume you have very little interest in the Eagles passing game these days.
There must be something to Smith.
Yeah. Yeah, Devontae Smith. I mean, very low ownership.
It's just a 5K, Devontae Smith.
Yeah. There's a lot of plays this week though in that 5K range, right? You got Waddle, you got Olave, all the Chargers.
That's a good spot for these receivers because it's a lot easier for a 5K receiver to get to 25 DK than a running back.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's like a good price point you want to load up on like these guys that can really explode for something that the 5K running back can't.
You mentioned on the young stacks, would your young stacks come preloaded with Ted Arroyo? This third one is a Leggett.
Yeah, the vast majority of mine would. I would probably say like at least 80%.
Yeah. I'm looking through, just scanning through here, some of these other Bryce Young lineups, but I forget. I think it was the Penix ones last week in general had way less expected value.
Yeah, these look
Bryce one.
By the Sims, these are better than the Penix last week.
Yeah.
But it's not the same situation even. Because I think last week the Penix was a little better just because of like the stacking variety that you could do it with.
Mm-hmm.
Because he had 4 guys you could stack with, and it's the double stack would always hit him having success. It's like a double stack minimum is in play. I kind of think like a lot of games where Bryce has success, it is just Alpha McMillan.
Yeah. And one other thing I think I would need to fix in the inputs is Jatavian's out. So we got to get the Tremble market share there boosted a little bit. I do want to look and see if there's any Rico in defense ones, because you had mentioned that too. Seeing a few of these pop up. Yeah. The top one's a Jalen Hurts to AJ Brown with Carolina Panthers and Rico. You could mess around with some of these here.
Yeah. That's really just an Achane chalk play or in the Waddle chalk play, and Miami gives up on the year.
Yeah. Are there any other specific quarterback stacks or players you'd want to look at in this sim run?
Not off the top. We got only 10 games.
Oh, we were going to look at Herbert, right?
Yes.
Let's see the Herbert stuff. Here's a Herbert to QJ. Breece Hall, Devon Achane, Nico, Marvin Harrison, JSN, Dalton Schultz, Saints defense. I should mention we're seeing definitely a ton of Achane, ton of Breece Hall. This second one, Herbert lineup though, there's our guy Rico opposite Achane. What do you think about 2 running backs from the same game like that?
One is really cheap, and then one catches balls, so it could probably get there. If they were both like dead zone, just getting carries, I wouldn't do it. Yeah.
Let's see what these Herbert Lad teams look like. EV not quite as great. This is a Herbert Lad Omarion team, which is kind of interesting. Then there's the Herbert Lad Keenan, more classic double stack there.
There's some appeal because you can definitely double stack him easily, and even Hampton, not that opposed to it. It's just for me, the Hampton, it's like he's coming with ownership. He had a big game. It's not like as preferred given what just happened.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it does seem in most of these, I guess there's a couple Keenans, but it definitely is primarily Lad and QJ showing up in these double stacks.
Dogs aren't for it.
the dog aren't for it. Look at that. They are going nuts for the Justin Herbert stacks here. If you guys want to check this stuff out, mess with the inputs like we were doing here, all of this available on Run the Sims. One thing we haven't even been getting to since the first week is using the optimizer, the diversity tool from Shady Advice. So if you're playing a certain amount of lineups, it can help you hand pick the lineups that work in concert with each other to build the best possible portfolio and essentially avoid cannibalizing yourself with too much exposure to specific players in the way an optimizer or even a sim will often give you the same play.
Imagine a realtor saying they're going to have a showing at 3:15, and when I say after 3, because there's a podcast and they come at 2:58.
Well, we're good here. We are good. We're going to wrap this up here. I have the off and on the clock underdog show here. I was just telling people they can get all of this stuff at Run the Sims. Use promo code Pete for 10% off any of these packages. And hopefully we can dupe you here on our way to $250,000. Any other final words here, Youda?
No, I'm just tilted right now.
It's all right. I'll let you go deal with the realtor. Do not worry about it here. The people love the dogs on the channel, so you are good to go. We will be back as always next Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern for Block Party. And this show with the Run the Sims crew. Like I said, right now I'm hopping over to a new stream to do the Off and On the Clock show. You'll be redirected if you're here. Otherwise, go check us out on Off and On the Clock. For JM, for Youda, for everybody hanging out in the chat. We'll see you guys next time.